The last royal Mustang, a legacy reborn. The golden sun dipped behind the towering mesas, casting a fiery glow across the sprawling desert. The wind whispered ancient secrets through the canyons as the distant thunder of hooves shook the earth. Leading the herd was a magnificent stallion, his coat a shimmering silver, his mane flowing like a banner of freedom. They called him Storm King, the last descendant of a bloodline that once ran with the wild kings of the plains. But power attracts danger. A wealthy tycoon named Victor Kane, known for capturing rare horses for his private collection, set his eyes on Storm King. He hired a team of expert wranglers, determined to break the wild stallion and claim him as his trophy. In a small cabin near the canyon lived Jake, a skilled horse whisperer who had once rescued and rehabilitated wild Mustangs. He had heard the stories of Storm King, the royal Mustang whose lineage was said to be traced back to the horses brought by Spanish explorers centuries ago. When Jake discovered Victor Kane's plan, his heart burned with anger. One twilight evening, Jake followed the tracks and found Storm King's herd trapped in a crude corral, frightened, their eyes wide with fear. But the mighty stallion stood defiant, pawing the ground, his gaze meeting Jake's with raw challenge. Suddenly, the wranglers appeared, ropes ready to strike. Jake stepped forward, his voice firm but calm, "You don't own him. He belongs to the wild." Victor Kane arrived, his voice dripping with arrogance, "Everything has a price." Jake clenched his fists, "Then let us wager. If I can ride him without force, you let them all go. If I fail, you take them and me." A cruel smirk curled on Kane's lips, "Deal." The tension thickened as Jake approached the wild stallion. He didn't reach for a rope or saddle, just his heart and voice. "You are the king," he whispered, "and kings are never tamed. But sometimes, they choose an ally." Storm King's ears flicked, his muscles taut, but he didn't bolt. Slowly, impossibly, the Mustang lowered his head. With a grace born from trust, Jake swung onto his back. The stallion reared, the crowd gasped, but Jake moved with him, like a shadow with its source. The earth thundered as they sprinted across the canyon floor, one heart, one spirit. When they returned, dust swirling around them, Victor Kane's pride had turned to disbelief. "A deal's a deal," Jake said, breathless but triumphant. Kane's men opened the corral, and the Mustangs fled, their freedom restored. Kane, seething, turned to leave, but Storm King stomped, barring his path, eyes blazing with warning. Kane felt the power of the wild and the judgment of a king. He retreated without another word. As the sun set, painting the sky in royal hues, Storm King turned to Jake, then, with a mighty cry, galloped to his herd. But before disappearing into the horizon, he paused once more, his gaze meeting Jake's. It was not farewell, it was recognition. Jake smiled softly, "Run free, Your Majesty." The legend of the royal Mustang would live on, not in chains, but in every gust of wind, every whispering canyon, and every beating heart that dared to fight for the wild. The night breeze carried the echoes of hooves long after Storm King and his herd vanished into the horizon. Jake stood motionless, his heart still racing, his body trembling from the raw energy of the ride. The stars blinked down as if witnessing history unfold. But Jake's moment of peace was fleeting because he felt it. A shift in the air. The crunch of boots on gravel. Victor Kane hadn't left. From the shadows emerged Kane, flanked by his men, their faces tied with anger and bruised pride. "You embarrassed me, boy," Kane hissed, his voice low but laced with venom. "But I don't lose. Especially not to some ranch hand romantic." Jake's eyes narrowed. "A deal's a deal," Kane. You lost. Walk away. But Kane's smile was cold. That horse, that king. He's worth more than your life. I'll find him. And next time, you won't be there to stop me. Before Jake could react, a sudden blow to the back of his head sent him crumbling into darkness. When Jake awoke, he was bound in a dimly lit barn, his wrists tied with rope. The air was thick with the scent of hay and leather, but beyond the wooden slats, he could hear something panic. Horses whinnying in distress, the clamor of men giving orders, and the unmistakable revving of engines. Kane was already hunting. But Jake hadn't come this far to let Storm King fall. Gritting his teeth, he worked at his bindings, feeling the sharp burn as the rope bit his skin. His eyes scanned the barn and locked onto a rusty horseshoe nail jutting from a post. With every ounce of his strength, he shuffled, grinding the rope against the metal until snap. His hands were free. Without a moment's pause, Jake burst from the barn and sprinted into the night. The distant roar of trucks echoed through the canyon trails. His heart pounded as he ran, guided by instinct alone. The moonlight cast a silver glow over the cliffs as Jake reached the high ridge, and his breath caught. Below, Kane's men were closing in on the herd, spotlights sweeping the valley like hungry predators. But there, atop a boulder, stood Storm King, his silver mane whipping in the wind, his eyes blazing with primal defiance. But he couldn't outrun trucks. Not alone. Storm King. Jake bellowed, his voice tearing through the night. The Mustang's ears flicked, and for a heartbeat, their souls collided again. Without hesitation, Jake leapt from the ridge, sliding down the rocky slope, his body battered and bruised but his spirit unbroken. He sprinted to intercept Kane's convoy, knowing he had no weapons, only his voice. You're chasing a king you'll never own. He roared at the trucks. But a king doesn't run. He charges. A sudden scream of hooves, thunderous and unrelenting. Storm King answered. The great stallion, leading his herd, charged straight toward the headlights. The ground shook with their fury. The drivers panicked, too wild, too fast, too much power. One truck swerved, slamming into another. Tires screeched, metal crumpled, and Kane's men scattered in chaos. But Kane, always ruthless, emerged from his jeep, rifle in hand, his eyes locked on Storm King. Crack! The shot rang out. But Jake was there. Diving. A searing pain tore through his shoulder as the bullet meant for the stallion struck him instead. He collapsed to the earth, gasping, blood staining the dirt. Storm King screamed. And then, he charged Kane directly. The tycoon's face drained of color, and he stumbled back, fear overpowering greed. The Mustang's power was unstoppable, but instead of striking, Storm King reared, his towering form a declaration of judgment. Kane's resolve shattered. The rifle slipped from his grasp, and he fell backward into the dirt. His lips trembled. It's just an animal, he stammered. But in Storm King's eyes, Kane saw it something ancient, something Kane could never own or understand. The next sound was sirens. Local authorities arrived, alerted by the gunfire and wreckage. Kane was taken away, his empire of cruelty shattered. But Jake was fading, the edges of the world blurring. His vision darkened. Until a warm, rough breath grazed his face. Storm King. The stallion's dark eyes, so wild and untamed, were now filled with something more: recognition, gratitude, and a promise. As the medics lifted Jake, he whispered through cracked lips, You're free, your majesty. Always. Epilogue. The legend of Storm King spread far and wide, the royal Mustang who defied man and machine, and the bond he shared with a man who sought not to own him, but to honor him. And on the distant horizon, where the sun kissed the earth, a lone rider could sometimes be seen. Not on a saddle. Not with a rope. But side by side with the king, free together. Because some kings do not reign over land. They reign over hearts. The sun dipped below the canyon ridge, casting a warm amber glow over the earth. The echoes of chaos sirens, shattered engines, and Cain's curses had long faded. Only the whispering wind and the steady beat of a horse's heart remained. Jake awoke to the soft beep of hospital monitors and the dull ache in his bandaged shoulder. His vision adjusted to the sterile room, and there, in the chair beside him, was a familiar face: Clara, the local veterinarian and his oldest friend. "You always did like diving in front of trouble," she teased, her eyes wet with relief. Jake's voice was hoarse, but his lips curved into a weak grin. "Couldn't he let a king fall?" Clara's expression turned serious. "Storm King and the herd are safe. They vanished into the highlands after the authorities arrived." "But Jake..." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Cain's not staying down. His lawyers are already spinning the story, claiming you interfered with his legal property." Jake's jaw clenched. "Storm King isn't property. He is sovereign." Clara nodded. "But we'll need more than words to prove it. The courts care about papers, not kings." Jake's hand found Clara's. "Then let us show them the truth." Weeks later, the trial. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Cain's legal team painted Jake as a reckless vigilante. "Mr. Cain," the lawyer declared, "purchased the land and everything on it, including the horses. Mr. Colton," he sneered at Jake, "chose violence over the law." Jake stood, his voice steady but burning with conviction. "You can buy land. You can buy fences. But you cannot buy wildness. These Mustangs are older than any deed Cain forged. They belong to the land itself." The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, raised a brow. "Do you have evidence, Mr. Colton?" Jake's heart pounded. "I have something more than evidence." The return of the king. The next morning, the court traveled to the canyons. The air was electric with anticipation as Jake, bandaged but determined, stepped forward and cupped his hands to his lips. His voice, raw and familiar, carried through the winds. "Storm King." A heartbeat. Then a tremor. The earth answered. From the rise emerged a silhouette of silver and power. Storm King. Behind him, the herd, free, wild, and proud. Gasps swept through the crowd. The judge's eyes widened as Storm King descended, his hooves striking the earth with royal command. He stopped inches from Jake, lowering his mighty head in recognition. Jake turned to the judge. "This is no possession. No conquest. This is trust. You can cage a body, but never a soul." The verdict. The judge's gavel struck with finality. "The Mustangs shall remain free, and the land protected under federal preservation. Mr. Cain's claim is hereby revoked." A roar of applause erupted. Cain, seething, was escorted away, his empire crumbling beneath the weight of his own greed. A kingdom eternal. As the crowd dispersed, Clara approached Jake with a knowing smile. "So, what now, Kingmaker?" Jake turned toward the horizon where Storm King waited. "Now we guard his kingdom. Together. With a shared glance, Jake and Storm King raced into the golden wilderness. No reins. No walls. Only the endless sky, the whispering wind, and the eternal bond between man and king. Because some legacies are not written in books. They are carved into the earth by the thunder of hooves and the hearts that dare to chase them.